This tank is purely a next level tank in World of Tanks console, and it is of course the brand new premium that Wargaming have released as part of the Cold War game mode. It is the AMX-13 SS11 TCA, the French light tank within World of Tanks console, and this thing in its most recent state is brilliant. It's so much fun. It's like a sneaky little assassin. Do I think that it's overpowered? No, this tank is not overpowered, but it certainly is very, very fun, and it takes light tank gameplay to kind of the next level for the majority of players who play Cold War. And for me personally, this is really an exciting tank to play, and it offers so much. It really is to be played like your kind of very tank. It's a light tank that's got to be played to the light tank strengths within World of Tanks. That is not a very well versed kind of heavy tank. You can't be brawling with mediums. This tank is not one that can play in a more brawling kind of setting. You do have to wait till the scenario kind of arises where you can perform some miracles, and this tank can perform miracles, and that is because this thing gets missiles, and you can see them on the top of the tank. Is probably one of the most interesting aspects of the tank, and we're going to see some missiles within these next two replays that we've got showcasing, and they're actually very good replays as well, ones that I was very surprised to be able to pull out as much damage. Now this one's on Nomonhon, a map that was reintroduced back into World of Tanks console not that long ago, but here you go, the first missile gets sent out, and you can see here, oh, 987 damage so easily. And my key thing about the missiles is often people try and use them at long range. That's not how the tank works. If you play and try and use them at long range like I have before, they just don't really work that well, and you can see me trying to aim, yeah, not going too well. However, what you can do with these missiles, and if you save them up and you don't waste them, you certainly don't want to be wasting these missiles, because they do 1000 damage, and you can easily get that damage if you just wait and you survive until the later half of the game. Yes, I've had a few replays where it didn't go to plan and you ended up kind of doing worse than you expected, but there's a lot of replays where that didn't happen, and yeah, you want to make sure that you do save these until you get into close quarters engagements where you are brawling towards the end of the game, when there's not much risk and you're kind of coming up against tanks one-on-one, and you're going to see this within this replay. Now this tank, every single time at the beginning of the game I play it more passively as a scout tank, and that allows you to basically use it as a very passive tank to begin with, and this gets super dangerous as you kind of go on within the game, and you'll note that the enemy's hit points disappear super quickly with this tank if you play it correctly, and of course that could be said for any tank in the game, but this one more so. You can demolish hit points within about a 5-second period. You can take off about 1800 hit points off of the opponents that you're facing because of the autoloader clip that this has, and it also doesn't share a cooldown with the missiles, so you can launch one of your missiles, fire your entire clip twice, and then back to the missiles, because it takes about 20 seconds before you can use the next missile after firing it. Even though there are 4 in a clip, the kind of intra clip is like 20 seconds, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. So that's kind of where I'm at with this tank and the overview, I guess. But let's actually focus more on the gameplay now and how you can play this tank should you choose to actually pick it up. And I don't think that this is an awful choice, especially if you're trying to play something new. There's not that many tanks in Cold War that are similar to this. I guess the closest resemblance is the Arctic Hiss, which has that 4-shot autoloader, or the Hiss, Cobra Hiss, whatever you kind of want to call it. It is essentially the same sort of tank where you have the 4-shot autoloader with 1000 damage every single kind of missile that you have, plus you then get the 6-shot autoloader with 150 damage per shot, meaning that you can deal like 1800 damage super quickly. And you're about to see where we turn it up a notch, where we go to the next level in this tank, and that is where you kind of go into these opponents pretty hard. Now, one thing that you want to be doing before you go YOLOing in, don't try and YOLO at the beginning of the game, because this tank gets shut down very quickly, because 2300 hit points at kind of the era 2 within Cold War doesn't tend to last very long, especially if you kind of YOLO in and you make them more aggressive like tank plays. Now what you see me doing here is making a massive mistake. I try and launch the missile at the side of the T-72AV, which of course has spaced armour and therefore is not the best use of what we should have done. We should have gone around the back of the tank and then fired our missile at super close range where you're not going to miss. You can still auto aim and you can still do damage. You don't want to be auto aiming with this thing over long ranges, and in general, if you can avoid it, you don't want to be auto aiming at all, because with the missiles they tend to don't go anywhere near where you're hoping that they do, because of course they lock to wherever the central position, so as you're moving they're turning the missile at the same time. So you want to make sure that you are kind of moving in the same plane in a straight line, whereby the trajectory is going to be pretty standard. Now what you're seeing me do here is finding the base campers on the enemy team, and we're just going to place a couple rounds into them whilst they're just sat there oblivious to the fact that we're pumping them in the side. Now you can see very quickly you can rack up a lot of damage. We try and go for the missile and we try and kind of lead it around the building, or not the building but the rock. Unfortunately that doesn't happen. We then decide, oh, maybe we can get the track of this chieftain. Unfortunately that doesn't go too well as well, but nevertheless we have the missile that's kind of reloading, or the APCR round that I'm trying to load. You can see here what my intentions are. We're going to go after these low health tanks and hopefully get some damage on them. Now then, being the more aggressive player that I tend to be on Cold War, I hate being a more passive. I don't particularly like it, other than at the start of the game in this tank, where you feel like you can actually get a decent amount of spotting as well. Now the chieftain then moves up, which of course is not particularly the best idea, and unfortunately we miss another missile, and this is something you definitely don't want to be doing. Don't miss your missiles in this tank, because they are super fun and super easy for you to basically get a 3000 damage when you come to the later half of the game. So don't go missing. But one thing that you can do is when a Leopard 1A decides to YOLO, you can ammo rack them with a missile, and of course that is what we do here, and we're able to get a nice chunk of hit points. Now we do get hit in the back by some of the boys that are sat, or the heavy tanks that have progressed onto our flank. We're going to move, we're going to then hopefully get this ATGM or missile, and then we can kind of go round behind them. That's the intent anyway, and then maybe we'll be able to kind of punish one of these two tanks. Now the chieftain gets ammo racked as well, I think, and then we've also got this chieftain right here that we're going to get up close and personal. We do 1100 damage with the actual rounds, and then we're going to finish him off with a couple of rounds there. Unfortunately we don't get the final damaging hit, but there you go. That is exactly what you want from this tank. Now there's a little bit of extra damage over on the other flank. Now if we hadn't wasted so many of our missiles, this would be like where you can mop up the rest of the damage within the game, because you can just YOLO in, put your one shot of damage. You basically are like a one shot TD where you can just go around and just one shot things at the end of the game, because no one has the hit points to be able to take one of your shots, and even if they do, you then have the autoloader which you can use to your advantage as well. Now we try and go around this guy. Luckily we kind of set him on fire at the same time, which feels bad for him but a brilliant move for us, and that allows us to get some extra damage. Now we've managed to pick up within this game about 7000 damage, which is perfect. Especially in a light tank that is not typically, I guess, the most brawly tank, the one that you expect to be doing the most damage in the game, but I guess you'll have to wait and see as to whether we did actually do the most damage in the game. Now, not only did we actually get proper damage, we got assistance damage with this tank, and primarily this thing is a light tank, and that is exactly what I mean by you can use this at the beginning of the game to get early spotting damage, and as you progress through you can get spotting damage as well, and that is why staying alive till the end of the battle is even more crucial in this tank, because you're able to spot, because you're able to do all of the extras. And what you're seeing here is just us kind of not auto aiming, but fully aiming at the Leopard 1A3 here. We're just trying to get some extra damage, and of course we do manage to do that. And not only is the tank brilliant at having those missiles, you've also got the fantastic great reload of the autoloader, 7.3 seconds to fully reload the 6-shot clip, which also then deals 900 damage in total. And of course that ends the game as our teammate in the MOBAT shuts down the Leopard 1A3 at the end of the game. And of course we do manage to pull off an amazing result in this tank, having picked up 7265 damage, 1485 base experience, 2 kills, and of course coming top in the game, 2231 assistance, and with a ×2 silver boost we picked up 481,000 silver as well. So it's a brilliant tank in terms of earning silver as well if you do have those silver boosts on, and even if you don't, you can still earn like 200,000 silver per game. Now jumping into the next replay, we have Westfield, which is one that I feel like this tank is probably suited the most for, and that's because a light tank on Westfield can have a massive impact in the game, and it will allow you to do things that maybe some of those heavy tanks, maybe some of those TDs won't be able to have the mobility to get into the spots that you really want to do. Now this tank isn't the fastest light tank, and I've been in two minds as to whether I want to take off the advanced optics to be able to put on the kind of better speed boost equipment that allows me to get up to top speed, has better terrain, or not terrain resistances, but turning speeds, better horsepower, that sort of thing. If we can do that, maybe that would be a better idea on this tank than trying to take things like improved ventilation, stuff like that. Now, we don't do that in these two replays, and so this showcases maybe one set of kind of equipment that you can use, but I would recommend trying out the advanced powertrain and advanced traction system so you can kind of get to grips with that yourself and find out whether or not that is actually worth it for you, and whether or not it is better to use those than improved ventilation, vertical stabilizers, and I believe we've got then coated optics in this thing, or advanced optics, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm kind of hesitant to shoot this T72. I'm going to hopefully get some assistance damage from this position, and I don't want to be too too forward. You see me turning so I can get a quick escape should we decide to actually fire, which we do decide to fire. The T72 doesn't move, and we pick up 1145 damage, having not even got spotted within this replay. So it's perfect. It is just perfect having the combination between having the autoloader as your main kind of weapon, whilst also having the ability to swap to your missiles to get a further damage, and you can kind of interswap without having to sacrifice any of your reloads, and you can be a very, very aggressive tank. And you're going to see the super aggressive tank as we go through at the end of this replay, and that's where I really like playing this tank. It makes almost playing light tanks in Cold War a little bit more fun. Now, light tanks in Cold War have been, I don't know, not necessarily bad, not necessarily too mediocre, but I feel like they get kind of ruffle stomped by a lot of the medium tanks that have pretty much the same or better speeds than them, so it doesn't really benefit you in terms of trying to be nimble and agile, other than if you're playing something like the Armadillo, which doesn't really count, to be honest with you. But there you go. Of course, we're trying to just hunt down this Leopard 1, find a shot on him at least. After firing 4 rounds, we've only managed to hit 1, and then we hit a second. So yeah, not to worry though, because of the 7.3 second reload of this autoloader, so you can almost continuously fire with this thing, and that's why I think I like it so much, is because you've always got something to do. You're never really that bored in this thing, and of course you can kind of use that alpha damage kind of in backup in the form of the missiles to your advantage as well, to really negate any YOLO wagons that decide like, oh, I'm just going to go in after this AMX to get him out the game. Now that obviously does not usually end up very well for them, and that's exactly what we like to see. Now there's a Conqueror over there, we bounce off of him once, and yeah, we're not going to get another shot into him, at least at the minute. Now, having picked up 2,681 damage and 2,204 assistance, you'd probably be able to earn a decent amount of silver. However, we have fired a little bit of premium rounds because this tank's standard premium or standard penetration is pretty poor, and even the premium penetration is pretty poor as well. So it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit painful, to be honest with you, to be able to kind of consistently get damage with the autoloader against a lot of these tanks that you do see within the game. However, what you can do is kind of counteract that by going full aggressive mode towards the end of the game, where you're not trying to snipe. This is not a sniping tank. This is a stay alive until the end of the game by being a more passive scout at the beginning, moving into a more kind of aggressive scout that's kind of still going for the assistance damage and assisting your team. And then as you get further and further on in the game, you then progress to the pure damage dealer, the one that just goes in and eliminates the targets that you need to. And you can see in this game I'm deciding, you know what, we're fully reloaded on the ATGM or the missile, let's go in after this Mobat. He's not going to particularly be able to deal with us. We put 1 round into him, we deal of course at least 1,000 damage with this. We then decide to just subject him to a torture of little rounds just coming in and in and in, and you see me here loading another or another ATGM that we only manage to bounce off of the other MOBAT here. Now we're loading the standard autoloader clip, albeit the standard APCR rounds. We're going to go for him as well. So we've done 4,500 damage in a very brief amount of time, and we can go in even more after this guy to hopefully get some more damage, and of course that's exactly what you want. We finish him off with one of the damaging hits in the game, and this is the point where, like, you know, you can progress and you can start to do extra stuff within this replay. Now you can see the Conqueror here is sat over there. There's a Leopard, there's a FV4211, which we've decided, you know what, we can actually really farm this guy and we can put out quite a bit of damage. You see that the Leopard is actually aiming, and he does actually fire a HE round, which pens me and sets me on fire, because yay. And of course we don't have a fire extinguisher either, which is just even less fun. Now we do come up against the back of all of these tanks, which is perfect when you're in an autoloader that can kind of dish out this pain. And of course we're going for easy targets, easy damage, and getting some extra silver in the bank, because ultimately that is why I primarily play Cold War, albeit I don't necessarily need to that much anymore because of the amount of silver that I do have on the account. You see me actually swapping really quickly between the rounds, being able to kind of use the autoloader and therefore get the extra damage here. The FV4211 is the final tank left alive, and hopefully we'll be able to get a few shots into him. We missed the first one, going for the second one, missed that too, and this is where the sniping aspect doesn't come in too well, but nonetheless 6,423 damage done, and a decent chunk of assistance as well, picking up actually more XP in this game than we did in the previous game, and showcasing why I think this is kind of like the next level kind of gameplay for a more aggressive player in their light tanks. Really enjoyed this tank, and actually for the price point I don't think it's awful. Do I think that you should go out and rush and get it because it's an overpowered premium tank? No. But yeah, if you're interested in light tanks, if you're interested in an aggressive playstyle that kind of offers something new, then this is one that I really did enjoy. So thank you very much for watching, and of course if you want to check out the update news securing all of the information that you need to know about this update that brought the AMX 13 SS11 TCA into World of Tanks console, then make sure to check out the left hand side of the screen. And of course if you're interested in more gameplay tank reviews of both Cold War and World War II vehicles, take a look at the right hand side with the playlist. Hope you join me in one of those, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.